Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. Oh, I haven't been live for quite a while. Part of it was watching my back, really, in case I got a knock on the door like anybody else who has been speaking up under this horrendous Marxist government that we have found ourselves. Unfortunately, things are just going from bad to worse. And just when I think that there's not going to be anything else that is going to repulse me more than what's already happened, then unfortunately, they manage to exceed themselves even on a downward spiral. If you're following my pages, you'll be aware that I'm still working my way through all of the horrid traitors who voted to cut the winter fuel allowance. It's going to take a long time because there are hundreds of them. And I have no doubt that they are not sitting at home freezing and worrying about turning their heating up. The reason it angers me so much is because it is the thin end of the wedge. And it is not just a financial milestone or social milestone, but it is also a moral and ethical milestone. Because for one reason or another, and I'm not saying it's by design, but you could be understood for believing that is the case. Most of our under 40s now have very little equity, if any. The vast majority are lucky to be able to rent, let alone buy, unless, of course, they have been given a helping hand by the bank of mum and dad. And obviously, that age range, or rather maximum, is increasing as they're getting older. And now the vast majority of the wealth in property is in the hands of the over 60s. And these horrid, calculating, evil people want to get their hands on it. Of that, there is no doubt. This is not conspiracy. This is not scaremongering. This is fact. They are bankrupting the country. They are creating a situation where they have nurtured, and this is successive government, it's not just the current one, the previous one is also just as bad and just as complicit. They have nurtured this attitude of envy and resentment for older people, where when it gets to the point where our country is in such a catastrophic state that they will justify some sort of one-off property tax or whatever, it will invariably be a direct or indirect plundering of older people's assets. They will have the vast majority of the population on their side because young people are being nurtured to be resentful. And let's not forget the millions of people who are arriving here who not only arrive entitled, but they are also nurtured to be entitled. We hear now that whereas the likes of you and I may wait hours to be seen at A&E, that these people who are elbowing their way into the country take priority. They're taking priority for housing. Many of these properties that are being made available are being made available firstly to those who have elbowed their way into our country. And I believe that that is fundamentally wrong. And I am convinced that they are setting up a society who will support them when they decide to come for your assets, because that is their long-term plan. They are now stepping up the game with farmers. They are stepping up the game with people, younger people. They are stepping up the game with taxation. They are literally relentless in their quest to create a society for the few, a truly horrid dystopian Marxist society. But it doesn't end there. I will ensure that the name and face of every single one of them who voted to cut the winter fuel allowance is out there, and it will be all they will all be in one album to make it easier to share them all together where they can reside. And I would urge you to continue to share and repost their images everywhere you can, ongoing. They must not be allowed to try to slip into anonymity with the fullness of time, and literally they think that by the next election everyone will forget. Well, they will not forget, because these images will be out there, and I will ensure that the web is bombarded with them before every by-election, wherever that may be, and before the next general election, whenever that may be. Who knows? I don't know if these people will last the full term, because they are already robbing Peter to pay Paul. They have literally destroyed the economy, and this is just the start. The official figures indicate that where the jobs market is concerned, according to the large employment agencies, their figures indicate recession figures the day after the budget. Our economy ground to a halt, in particular because of the changes to national insurance contributions, which makes employing people a lot more expensive, but also changes to employment laws that basically puts employers at a disadvantage, being held to ransom by any employee from day one. I struggle to understand that, as I've never worked for anybody. My attitude is if I don't work, I don't get paid. I cannot understand the philosophy that if I want to pay somebody to perform a service for my business one way or another, today, for a day or a week or a month, that I should have any obligation beyond paying them for that period. It is my business. Maybe they're no good. Maybe I don't like them. Maybe I just can't stand their face. I should have the right to just say, I don't want you here. You're paid until today. Bye bye. Because as somebody who works for myself, that is what happens to me in whatever business I am doing. My clients do not want my services for whatever it is. As it happens, I'm in property. If a client says to me, I do not want you to sell my property now, that's it. I have no issue with that. The agreement ends there and then. So I can never get my head round all of these employment liabilities, and why people who literally have no business to be working in a particular industry, because they just do not have the aptitude, they do not have the skills, they do not have the intelligence, they do not have the interest to be there, why they should be able to hold an employer to ransom, because this is all driving our businesses downwards. On top of this, these ridiculous diversity, equity laws, once again, are laws that skew things in favor of minorities. There are so many companies who are employing an increasing number of people who are just not up to the job, but it's all about what they demonstrate, and do they fulfill their woke criteria. But it's bankrupting our businesses, because that puts us at an even greater disadvantage against countries that do not have these ridiculous laws. And then on top of that, for Jess Phillips, the hypocrite, to literally take the side of a minority, a certain demographic that wants to hide the hundreds of paedophiles in their community, and after playing the virtue signaling hypocrite all through the time before she was in office, to literally now effectively want to sweep these actions under the carpet, is not just unforgivable. It turns my stomach, quite frankly, because when society reaches a point where it overlooks the abuse of women and children, then that society is heading downwards. It's not just heading downwards, it's hurtling downwards. And we are now in a society that is demonstrating itself from the top that it doesn't care about our elderly, it doesn't care about the abuse and the attacks that are increasing against women. And we know why, even though we can't really say so easily, can we? How convenient is that? And the increasing grooming and attacks on young girls and young boys. It's not just young girls. These people are sick. They really, really are inherently sick. And this is not by accident. This is by design. And I'll let you join up the dots for obvious reasons. Personally, I don't think that any of us should rest until every single perpetrator of a sex act, grooming, kidnapping against our children is brought to justice and exposed and punished. And if we don't do that, then where will we be in 5 or 10 years' time? It's almost hard to fathom how far our society has slid downwards in the last decade or so. The only way to actually try and fathom how much things have changed for the worse is take some time and imagine somebody who's been in a coma since 2010 and who were to wake up today and then run through these ridiculous trans laws, run through these ridiculous gagging laws, people being thrown in prison for expressing an opinion, for conjecture, for basically casting their opinion on events, good and bad. And the most recent one that people have gone to prison for is turning out to be basically fundamentally true. Imagine if you were to then tell them that our previous head, our director of public prosecutions, the man who at the very least allowed Jimmy Savile to evade justice, did he go further? That's for you to decide. If there were to be and basically a discussion about what the allegations made against him, the fact that he has been living in somebody's home, not just for days, but for weeks on end, and another man is buying him clothes and his wife clothes. What does that say? Because if you were to say to this person, our prime minister, has been involved in some sort of illicit relationship, probably their first response to be, who with? Mandelson? And we would literally shock them by telling them, no, with an Asian lord who's bought him £36,000 worth of clothes. Here is Mr. Hypocrite himself, who has demonstrated that he does not have the moral capacity, the moral compass, or the interest, or the love of this country to fulfill his position. And whilst I do appreciate that when it comes to matters of the destruction of our country, that my emotions and my words are frequently unbridled, which may be too much for some, it was a decision that I took because it's the easiest thing in the world to just stand up and pay lip service and just go along with the narrative, like these people had done before they got into office. Anything they could jump on to just say something to look like they have taken the higher moral ground. But the reality is that in office, they are far from that. Personally, my reasons for standing was not to get elected up for any reason, or not to say anything that I needed to say just to get elected. My reasons for standing was to cause as much trouble as I possibly can, to make as many waves as possible, and to encourage everyday people like you to speak up while they still can, because the clock is ticking and the noose is tightening and we don't have long left. They are actively seeking every avenue to silence the already silent majority until such time as they are the minority, for reasons that I'm sure you are aware. I find it quite shocking that so many people still react with slander uh, and horrendous responses to anyone who wants to defend our nation, our culture, our heritage, and our history. Because personally, as well as wanting to stand up for the elderly who we owe everything to, I don't care if they live in a mansion or a Wendy house. As far as I'm concerned, they are entitled to their winter fuel allowance. They should be looked after. And if they are so rich that it means nothing to them, first of all, I'm sure they pay many times that in tax each year anyway. And it is between them and their conscience as to what they do with it. But one thing is for certain: if we were to, or rather, if the government were to create yet another department in the civil service to means test elderly people for their winter fuel allowance, that department would soon swell and it would cost more than any potential savings that they would make. So I am in favour of just carte blanche giving all elderly a winter fuel allowance. But conversely, my thoughts are with the young who have been terrified into climate anxiety by this abomination of a narrative that is using their version of science to implement measures to control everyone. And the first thing you will hear from them is, "You don't know better than the scientists." No, I don't. There's only one problem: that it's only the scientists that are in your pocket who are permitted to speak up. Anybody who contradicts the narrative, any scientist that contradicts the narrative, seems to be silenced, cancelled, disappear. Remember David Bellamy? I would urge you to look up as to why he disappeared. It all began with a photo of a polar bear on a small block of ice many years ago, which was the start of the misinformation that has led now to this moron by the name of Ed Miliband, who is out with his ukulele singing "The answer is blowing in the wind." Could you possibly believe this? How low our leadership has sunk to reach the point where we have an absolute moron pledging billions to other countries to help them with their net zero quest, who is literally putting the faith of our energy into wind farms, which actually cost more to run than they generate, which are actually not biodegradable when their life ends, and many of them do fall apart under strong winds, that half the time they don't work because the wind is not blowing. And when the wind is not blowing, the rotors need to be turned slowly using electricity. And when the wind blows strongly, they have to be switched off. These things are ridiculous, and yet we are losing thousands and thousands of acres of arable land for these monstrosities. And every wind turbine results in over 800 cubic meters of concrete and steel poisoning the land beneath it forever. Is that really the act of a government that is concerned about our climate, our environment? I say not. And therefore, it is important that we speak up. It is important that we do not give them a minute's rest, and that we demand at every opportunity an election, a by-election, and resignation, because these people are unfit to be running our country. Let me just take a look at the comments I've got here. Right. David, the police are in it up to their ears, aren't they? Just. Sean, I've joined Reform Anthony and applied to be a councillor. Congratulations, Sean. I'm very, very pleased to hear that. As I said, my words and my emotions are unbridled. I've been told to shut up by the best of them, including people within the party, but I don't care. I'm here to speak up, and nobody's going to stop me. And if there are issues that I take up with regards to the party, I feel it is my obligation to do so. And there are issues that I do have, and I will be covering them in future live streams. But I'm really pleased to hear that. Please feel free to get in touch. Happy to meet up with you, have a coffee, exchange ideas, and happy to support you and do what I can to support you. David, look at the bigger picture. They wanted Harris in and ban. That would going to be WF in control. Well, yes. Now, that's quite an interesting one, because this idiot sent, 100 councillors, Labour councillors, to the USA to campaign for Kamala. On what grounds? Why would they do that? That's absolutely disgraceful. Now, that is meddling in the politics of another country. But here's the irony. Everywhere Labour councillors went, Kamala's vote actually collapsed. So indirectly, they helped Trump to win. But here we are a few weeks later, and Elon Musk speaks up, which he's perfectly entitled to do, calling for an election because this government has been a disgrace with regards to the grooming scandal, with regards to their threats on free speech, and they do not like it. And they're saying they want to change the laws just in case it contributes and supports reform. This is the hypocrisy of these people. David, and remember, King Charles earns 45 million for letting them use the Crown land to put the wind farms on the seabed. Well, yes, I'm aware of that. It's absolutely tragic. So ultimately, the fight goes on. We must not be bullied into backing down, and we must not allow them to get away with what they have done. And on that note, I'll end quickly, otherwise I will waffle on for too long. I will try and make time to get back to speak to you all, because there's so much going on, and I really feel compelled to speak up about it. I am doing everything I can in the background. You may be aware, if you're watching my pages and my articles that I write, we all need to do our bit to fight, because this government is a catastrophe in the making, and they are destroying our nation. That's all for now. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye for now.